That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Mindcage, the 8th film directed by Mauro Borrelli, which is being released courtesy of Lionsgate, though I don't know why, on December 16, 2022.
The director?
Mauro Borrelli.
Do you know his other films?
I don't, but you need to flash a picture of the poster for his last feature, War Hunt, starring Mickey Rourke with an eye patch, which also has, from the same screenwriter who needs to be dragged, Reggie K. O'Hara III.
Yeah, this was a really odd film.
You know, it came across my radar and I'm like, oh, Martin Lawrence as a detective? Let me watch this.
And it's not a comedic role. Yeah.
Not
this
in the way
is also, like, I mean, I would say it's like a Xerox copy of Silence of the Lambs, and then they put a little twist on it. But
Thomas Harris should be suing.
So that's weird, but, you know, if you're going to rip something off, might as well rip something good off. So the story, like, on paper is interesting. And I think the screenplay is okay, but the acting is like, whoa, from Martin Lawrence and the other lead.
Detective Mary Kelly, with 2 first names, Melissa Roxburgh, a Canadian.
Yeah, that was really, I mean, just from everybody. And then my impression of John Malkovich is that he's like a talented actor.
Well, he is.
And he's been in like some critically acclaimed things.
Twice Oscar nominated, yes.
So it's interesting that he would be okay with taking a role where he's like a low rent Hannibal Lecter.
With a Laurie Strode haircut. Mm-hmm.
And really odd like makeup, but because he's given like under eye bags.
Are we sure that's makeup?
I mean, if it's not, that's really bad.
I mean,
too.
he's not like fresh and crisp.
But yeah. So anyway, I'm going to tell the story. Of course, there are spoilers. So John Malkovich plays a serial killer who's referred to as the Angel. And
Le Feur is his last name.
We find him in prison. So he's been caught. And there are copycat murders occurring. And the detectives who are assigned to the case are Martin Lawrence and
Detective Mary Kelly. And of course, Martin Lawrence's character, Jake Doyle, was the one responsible for having taken down John Malkovich.
Right. And in the process of taking down the what is the name of his character? The Angel?
I thought it was the artist.
The artist. I don't know what I said earlier. But I'm still half sick. But
they keep saying his last name, though. It's Le Feur, which sounds so awkward. It's another...
That's why I use actors' names, because who cares about these fake-ass names? So in the process of Martin Lawrence capturing John Malkovich, Martin's partner gets killed. But not by John Malkovich. His partner kills himself. He, like, self-immolates. So immediately... We would assume that there's some supernatural element. But we find out that John Malkovich has this supernatural ability that if he sketches someone, he can inhabit their body, basically. So there are 3 or 4 murders that occur. Well, 3, I think. And then a 4th one is like the lieutenant governor. So there's like a countdown to catch him catch the killer before the lieutenant governor's killed.
Much like Diane Baker's daughter, was she the governor as well in Silence of the Lambs being the one that's abducted. Anyway.
So the gag is Martin Lawrence is the one doing the killings because John Malkovich sketched him and he's been using Martin's body to... The only cool part about this movie, I thought, were the actual killings because they're very elaborate displays. So these random victims are placed in these very elaborate scenes, which seem impossible to execute.
Because they would be.
Particularly in the time we're told that they were allotted.
Particularly if they were done by the body of Martin Lawrence.
And my very first note, so I need to finish the story. So Martin's the one responsible because of John Malkovich. His partner, Mary Kelly, she shoots and kills Martin. So everything's solved. So we flash forward some time and we see Mary Kelly at her father's funeral. And as she's leaving, it's important to know she knows that John Malkovich is inhabiting other people's bodies. So as she's leaving, she sees a guy sitting like at the cemetery, and she recognizes him as the guy who was running the prison where John Malkovich is. So she goes and sits next to him, and it's John Malkovich's voice. Just like when we see Martin doing the killing, it's not his voice.
That's
It's really odd. But he's telling her like, "Oh, you thought you can get rid of me that easily?" And she's like, "No, in fact, I was counting on seeing you again." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to kill you," basically. And she goes, "Okay, well, did you receive a package of pencils?" And he's like, "Yeah." "Where'd you think those pencils came from? Some admiring fan?" And he's all quiet. And she's like, "Well, I noticed when you like to sketch, you bite on the tip of your pencil." And an important plot point is that the way Malkovich kills the victims is he has some like chemical substance that like one drop will kill you.
That's been extracted from some kind of
something
bean.
from something. Yeah, some kind of bean. She's like, "I soaked all those pencils in that poison. So while you were gnawing on them pencils, you were poisoning yourself." And so immediately he like disconnects from the body, and then we see John Malkovich die at the end. My very first note is a person with a 40-hour-a-week job couldn't be a serial killer.
Nope, couldn't. Not with that level of detail.
How
Maybe
could you?
Art student, because these are straight up art installations. Let me tell you.
Or like a person in LA trying to be an actor who doesn't have a real job. I feel like they could be a serial killer. But like I could do it. You need a lot of time to clean up, and so that was my first note.
To get all your supplies at Joann Fabrics.
You said this,
Michael's.
but I agree. This feels like the shittiest episode of the series Hannibal that never aired, and it's still not even that good. It's just kind of shocking because it feels like it has some kind of budget, but then
Sometimes.
for some reason we get a lot of scenes with Martin and Mary Kelly driving in the car, and the green screen on that is like, I mean, it's like The Room. It's really bad.
And then there's one real elaborate following this set of clues where there's a needle of a compass on one of the bodies, and they follow it and find the compass that used to belong to somebody.
Well,
that's in a
let's
museum.
explain that. So the copycat killer is leaving clues on the bodies, and that's what precipitates Martin's boss, the county sheriff, to say someone needs to go talk to the artist, John Malkovich, and maybe he will help you because he doesn't want someone, taking his glory. So then that's when Mary Kelly goes, and we find out that on each body there are clues. The first one is like Mary Kelly's like a lipstick or a nail polish color she used to use that's now discontinued. Then we find like a needle from the compass of Martin Lawrence's dead partner. Then on another body we find the compass without the needle. And then getting to what you just said, that scene was ridiculous.
Yes, then we go to a museum, and the compass put together points to a picture, a portrait by Hieronymus Bosch in this book called The Infernal Landscape. And
But
this
you need,
angel named
but
Samel.
that was so stupid because Martin just grabs this compass and just plops it on the table in front of the dead body, and then he jams the needle in there, and then then the arrow's supposed to point north, right? Isn't that how a compass works? But the arrow's not pointing north. It's like it's broken or something. It's pointing like whatever direction, and then they look, and there's a portrait, and then what?
Well, and behind the portrait is a phrase in Dutch, which leads us to this book on Bosch, and
it's just very rudimentary. Like, what? How did you? And then Martin Lawrence's character doesn't seem like they keep saying he does great detective work, but he's not exemplifying a great detective.
No, in fact, he gets frustrated really easy, and he kind of shoves chairs around, and his boss is like, "You need to take a break."
The boss is acting, Martin's acting, Mary Kelly's acting. Like, just everyone is so damn crunchy.
Martin's just grimacing, and then there are flashbacks between when Martin is interrogating John Malkovich, and John's hair is a little different. It's braided in the front.
And they make Martin look young by putting a part in his shit. But we get that scene like 3 times. The very first time is like, 20, 30 minutes in? That's when I knew, Martin's the killer. I didn't know how. Maybe he's possessed. I assumed he was possessed. I wouldn't have imagined that John Malkovich is possessing him. I thought maybe he did like some black magic on his ass. But it's just like, the way Martin's acting, it was almost like he's like you know what it felt like? Like how Joe Coy's movie,
Easter Sunday,
which I thought was pretty funny, but it's like clearly this guy's like a stand-up comedian and this is his first time in like a feature film. So the acting was a little crunchy, but he made up for it with his comedy chops.
Sure.
Seeing Martin in this movie, you would think that they plucked this man from like he works as a greeter at Walmart or Sam's Club, and then this is his first time in front of a camera. But forget that Martin is known as a comedic actor. He doesn't seem like he's comfortable in front of the camera, period.
They're just using his body.
It was really weird. But getting back to the beginnings of this story, so when Martin's boss suggests that someone go talk to him, Martin's all upset. And then his partner says, well, I have a degree in psychology and I'm very familiar with the artist. I should go talk to him. And the county sheriff says, yeah, you do it. And Martin gets so upset. And he doesn't even want to acknowledge her. Then they get in their car and they're driving to wherever they're going. And he, tells her a very detailed account of how his former partner died. That didn't make any sense.
Nope. Mm-mm.
You didn't even want to acknowledge this lady, and now you're giving her, this very intimate detail of your partner, and I don't know. I thought that writing was crunchy. But again, I think the overall story is interesting about this serial killer who can control people by sketching their faces. I mean, it's kind of stupid, but it's interesting. Like an episode of, some TV show.
Well, and then, of course, he only wants to help Mary Kelly, so he's only feeding her details. And then after it's been determined that he's just really playing games with them, he's like, I'll give you the address of the copycat killer, but you have to let me sculpt you first. So he sits there and sculpts a bust of her while they're playing games, and then we learn really odd, he knows very intimate information about her life. Apparently she married the priest that used to provide succour to her.
Well, going back a little bit, we get a scene where Martin goes and visits a voodoo lady, and we see her.
It's like a class,
but it was like a 45-second scene that we don't revisit. Not quite sure what that was supposed to mean.
No.
Then getting back to the portrait from the museum that has they go get this book Inferno Landscape, and immediately Mary Kelly gets on her phone and is like, oh, it's out of stock. And Martin's like, I know where to get it.
And then they go to the library.
Because he's had referenced that he had looked it up before. His character also seems to know a lot about, this kind of, I don't know how you would classify this.
Angels and Demons, Dan Brown.
This kind of stuff. But then it's I don't know if it's a red herring to make us think that.
Yes, I think.
Because he ultimately is the killer. He's just not in control of his mind. So I thought that was kind of, again, rudimentary.
Okay, so then John Malkovich gives an address, and it's very Silence of the Lambs ripoff again, and all the cops rush to one address. But he hands her this bust, and he's like, everything you need is in your head or something, because the real address of the real copycat killer is inside this bust.
But reversing a little bit, all the visions that Mary Kelly's having, these nightmares of hellstone and brimfire, whatever you call it.
Fire and brimstone?
No.
Hellscapes?
No, isn't it called? Whatever. I thought those looked very, I don't know. This movie had a very odd, vibe to it. The cinematography.
Well, it's a copycat of Copycat. It's a copycat of Silence of the Lambs. And it's dumb.
Then we learn that Malkovich's character has seizures, and we learn why. His mama was a hoe, and she would have men like John's come over to the house, and one day, as a little boy, John's character wasn't doing what she told him to, and she pushes him, and he hits his head, and that's what precipitates his seizure disorder. So we find out that he has killed her and has her mummified in some apartment. So getting back to the whole address situation, he knows that the rest of the police are listening because Mary Kelly is wiretapped. So he gives them a fake address, and that address leads him to the apartment where his mama's dead body is. But then he gives the sculpted head, which he sculpts in 10 minutes. And when you see the finished product, it's like, there is no way he did this in 10 minutes.
Well, and it certainly doesn't look like her.
I thought it was a cool little sculpture, though.
Yeah, but that's any and all white lady bust.
Another plot point is there's a homeless man who keeps like trying to assault Mary Kelly. That is so poorly done.
With the costume designer slap on those wrists. Those tattered clothes are. That looks like a high school production of What's Something About Poor People. Ironweed. It's a high school production of Ironweed is where that man stepped off of.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this movie, I didn't care for it. I think, if you're interested in seeing Martin in a dramatic role,
which I was,
you're going to be disappointed.
And I was.
What would you give this movie? 1
out of 5 stars. Although it is kind of amusing watching John Malkovich do his little. What do they call it in Insidious when they're going to the further or whatever? Not the upside down. Is it the further?
Whatever. Yeah, he's kind of, because he has to lay down and hold the portrait, and then he's like twitching.
And then he's twitching, and he's like doing things with. It looks like he's masturbating with the portrait. But
I would give it a 1 out of 5. I will say, for the length of the movie, even though I was assuming Martin was the killer, I was like looking forward to figuring out who was the killer, so it did keep me going. So it's not the worst thing I've seen.
No.
And I think if you go into it knowing that it's, not good, it could be amusing. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.